Smoking a joint, legal in many states, but not here in Tennessee, with millions spent taking on tokers. The local I-Team reveals the high cost of prosecuting pot use.
Pot is now legal in more than 20 states for either medical or recreational use, so what are the chances of that happening in Tennessee?
Well, a Memphis lawmaker is pushing to loosen marijuana laws, saying too much money, time, and resources are spent going after people possessing small amounts of the drug.
And local I-Team senior investigator Jeni DiPrizio breaks down how much taxpayer money is being spent on prosecution.
$42 million. That's how much the state of Tennessee spent in 2010 enforcing marijuana possession laws, according to the American Civil Liberties Union. We're talking about people busted for having a small bag of pot or a joint, not a big dealer.
How many less judges, stenographers, bailiffs, bail bondsmen would we need? Defense attorneys, district attorneys, ADAs would we need if pot was legal?
Yeah, so just pick one. Are you corrupt or are you incompetent?
Thorne Peters, maybe Memphis's most outspoken pot activist.
This is a business. You are messing with an enterprise and an industry.
It's unreal, and that we're tying people up in our system, on weed charges.
State Representative Antonio Parkinson is pushing to have the law changed. In Shelby County, where the crime rate is high, where short police, courtrooms are jammed, Parkinson says decriminalizing an ounce or less makes sense.
There are so many other things that our law enforcement can be doing besides being concerned about people with small amounts of marijuana.
According to the ACLU, in 2010, when it comes to enforcing marijuana possession laws, Tennessee spent $21 million on police, $15 million on the judicial and legal system, and $5 million on corrections.
While there are a good number of misdemeanor marijuana cases every day downstairs, I'm not sure that they present an overwhelming burden or something that really slows the system down.
Paul Hagerman with the Shelby County District Attorney's Office does not think that changing the law would have a dramatic effect on the jammed Shelby County court system.
We're able to handle the misdemeanor marijuana cases, I think, sensibly and quickly.
We're just really throwing money down a hole on a situation that other states have started to try to turn into a form of tax revenue.
Brian Fawnin with the ACLU supports decriminalization or reducing penalties for those charged.
I would think it would free up a lot of resources, and I think it would also, there'd be a lot of people that are in jail today that wouldn't be in jail if this hadn't been such a focus of law enforcement.
I was incarcerated from July 2009 to February 2011.
Peters was in jail on pot charges for 572 days, costing taxpayers more than $53,000 before he finally went to trial, a charge that has a maximum sentence of just under a year. He says that alone is evidence why the laws need to change.
It's madness. And they're spending a fortune on this insanity to say, hey, look, we're out there fighting crime.
Last year, Representative Parkinson sponsored a bill to let municipalities decide how they want to handle people getting caught with small amounts of pot. It failed in committee. In January, Parkinson plans to once again fight to get Tennessee's marijuana laws loosened. For the I-Team, I'm Jeni DiPrizio.
Felicitations, friends indeed. This feature illustrates that even those who stand up as advocates for the cause, as well as those who are sympathetic, and even those who are just explaining conditions to the best of their abilities, witlessly take a position that enfranchises the evil empire.
We're talking about people busted for having a small bag of pot or a joint, not a big dealer. Saying too much money, time, and resources are spent going after people possessing small amounts of the drug. Parkinson says decriminalizing an ounce or less makes sense.
There are so many other things that our law enforcement can be doing besides being concerned about people with small amounts of marijuana.
We cannot abide by a political policy that makes a distinction between growers, dealers, and tokers. We the peeps are all in it together, all the way, a sacred trinity. One cannot be without the other, so one cannot bask in liberty while the other suffer despotism. Legislation that decrees that growers do decades in prison, dealers do years in prison, and tokers go home must never be supported by Cannabis Universe. That's what we mean when we say one love.
Last year, Representative Parkinson sponsored a bill to let municipalities decide how they want to handle people getting caught with small amounts of pot.
As we were supposed to have learned by the dreadful examples set from slavery to Jim Crow, from women's suffrage to gay rights, we cannot allow municipalities to vote their bigotry over social issues because they usually will follow the herd like a pack of sheeple and lead lambs to the slaughter. You, individually or collectively, do not have the moral or legal authority to vote against my inalienable human and civil rights. That's the law.
From the Constitution of Tennessee, Article 11, Section 14. The intermarriage of white persons with Negroes, mulattoes, or persons of mixed blood, descended from a Negro to the third generation, inclusive of their living together as man and wife in this state, is prohibited. The legislature shall enforce this section by appropriate legislation.
Peters is still facing misdemeanor charges for marijuana possession.
They are going to impanel a jury at a great fortune to you, the taxpayers, to try to cover their political bacon.
We're able to handle the misdemeanor marijuana cases, I think, sensibly and quickly.
I was incarcerated from July 2009 to February 2011.
Peters was in jail on pot charges for 572 days, costing taxpayers more than $53,000 before he finally went to trial, a charge that has a maximum sentence of just under a year.
There's been enough money spent on my case, including the 9-month-long sting operation and this 19-month wrongful incarceration and malicious prosecution, to have built a wing at a school, to have built a homeless shelter.
$42 million. That's how much the state of Tennessee spent in 2010 enforcing marijuana possession laws, according to the American Civil Liberties Union.
Disgracefully, these figures are just a drop in the vat to the actual devastating cost. Whole enterprises are not accounted for in this figure. It does not include the rivers of fuel for choppers hunting the panorama for weed, or the mountains of parole and probation officers for potheads alone. And it does not include one scintilla of the cost for the ocean and piss tests that are flushing the growth of schools and communities right down the toilet. Every inmate is routinely drug tested, and when they test hot, it adds anywhere from months to years to their sentence. Cha-ching!
I'm one of 25 million pot-smoking Americans.
Institutions of oppression cannot be reformed. They can only be abolished with extreme prejudice.
Well, a Memphis lawmaker is pushing to loosen marijuana laws.
Parkinson plans to once again fight to get Tennessee's marijuana laws loosened. Brian Faunin with the ACLU supports decriminalization or reducing penalties for those charged.
You know, it's a good thing for Negroes that this legal strategy wasn't used during civil rights, because nowadays it would be against the law to hang a nigger for looking at a white woman, but you could still cut off his dick to teach him a lesson. How's that for reform?
There'd be a lot of people that are in jail today that wouldn't be in jail if this hadn't been such a focus.
When I stand up and face down the evil empire in court, yet again, in my current pot case for the ages, I will make it clear that we the peeps do not need legislation to change the law. Legislation is what keeps pot illegal. We need activism and advocacy to demand that the legal industrial complex follow the law and uphold our constitutional right to toke pot, deal pot, and grow pot as consenting adults in a free society. Any other argument makes you the enemy within, paving the roads to prison for potheads with your senseless notions and nonsense. So cease and desist. Every time you vote on freedom, we all lose. End of story.
May you and yours be safe from the enemies of freedom.
Take care.
All right, party peeps. It's time for you to go to ThornePeters.com. That's THORNE Peters.com. Check out his books, read his poetry, listen to his music, purchase his original designs on Styleware in his gift shop, and enjoy pics of a wild time. All that and more is waiting for you at ThornePeters.com. That's THORNE Peters.com, the world's most e-fucking website.
I am a pot smoker. I love smoking pot with smoking hot